I've played some bad racing games in my time, and I've also played some pretty forgotten ones. But never before have I seen a game that's such a mix of those two things. A game so obscure that finding actual info about it feels harder than winning a Formula 1 World Championship. Welcome to the Worst Racing Games, the internet series where you guys suggest different racing games that you think are terrible, then I play them, review them, and rank them. Last week we played the very strange and kinda not good Hummer Badlands for the PS2, and this week the wheel has finally blessed us with a different platform, and that is the original PlayStation. We are playing a game called Formula GP. This was released in September of 2003, which is, quite late into the PS1's lifespan. By this point, the PS2 was dominating, the Xbox was a thing, the GameCube was out, and proper F1 games had become, significantly more advanced. And yet somehow, this happened. So this game was developed by a company called Kung Fu, and published by Midas Interactive. Oh boy, we're in for a fun one. So Kung Fu were known for developing just a few budget racing games such as Truck Racing, All-Star Racing, and Super Bike Masters, just to name a couple of them. Now, if you've seen this series before, you are probably familiar with Midas Interactive. They were known for publishing a lot of budget, sloppy games, such as Rascal Racers, which we looked at a couple of months back. So yeah, Formula GP is exactly the kind of PS1 budget game you'd expect to find buried in a supermarket bargain bin between a WWE DVD and some dodgy looking third-party memory card. And honestly, that kind of makes it interesting, because games like this are a forgotten part of gaming history. Not every PS1 game could be a smash hit. Some of these games were just kind of products, I guess, cheap and quick and disposable. Formula GP feels like one of those games. But surprisingly, it's not completely terrible, which honestly might be the weirdest part about it. Now, let's take a look at the menu design first off, because that genuinely is completely terrible. Right away, it just gives you one of the most lifeless first impressions I've ever seen from a video game menu. It's incredible, and it's not incredible because it's stylish or polished or memorable, it's because it genuinely looks unfinished. It's a mostly black background, a logo for the game that looks like it was made in Microsoft Paint by a 3-year-old, and a random image of an unlicensed Formula-style car. And you get two magnificent options, start and options. That's basically it. There's no flashy intro or music or atmosphere or any attempt whatsoever to make this feel like an exciting game. It honestly, genuinely looks like a placeholder menu that somebody forgot to replace before the game shipped. And weirdly enough, I guess it's part of the charm, maybe, because Formula GP has absolutely no interest in pretending to be bigger than it is, because this game certainly wasn't trying to compete with the actual licensed F1 games. It was just trying to exist, and technically it does succeed at existing at least. Now this is my favourite part. Let's talk about the game modes, or should I say, the game mode. Because Formula GP contains exactly one thing to do. Single race, guys. That's it. No championship, no season mode, no career progression, no multiplayer, no unlockables, no time trials. I could keep going here, no challenge events, just race. You pick a car, you pick a track, and you drive. Honestly, the simplicity almost feels aggressive. Most budget games at least try to create the illusion of content, like a fake progression system or a few meaningless unlockables. But Formula GP just doesn't even bother. It just strips the entire F1 experience down to its absolute skeleton and then jumps up and down on that skeleton until it turns to dust. And in a weird way, it's kind of refreshing. A lot of the games that I've looked at follow the same patterns in this series, and this one just throws it all out the window. I mean, look at modern racing games. They're overloaded with systems, battle passes, online rankings, daily challenges, microtransactions, 55 different menus before you actually get to drive a car. But Formula GP says no to all of that. Here's a car, go drive around, and honestly, fair play guys, respect. Now, before we go any further, if you're a fan of retro racing games or retro games in general, then why not consider hitting that subscribe button and tapping the bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. And if you'd like to support this series or the channel any further, then please consider checking out my Patreon using the link in the description below. Over on my Patreon, you can get access to cool goodies like early access to Worst Racing Games episodes, behind the scenes stuff, and your name in the credits of every single upload. Anyway, that's enough selling myself to you. Let's have a look at some of the tracks that Formula GP is offering you. So of course, Formula GP did not have the FIA license, so all 8 tracks in this game are completely fictional. So we've got some really generational racetrack names such as Hill Valley and Boulder Raceway. These kind of sound like legally safe versions of real circuits created moments before somebody was going to get sued. Anyway, the tracks themselves, surprisingly, aren't terrible. I mean, visually, they're very rough. Texturally, they're also very rough. But layout-wise, they're actually, well, functional. And sometimes kind of interesting. There's some focus on long straights, some are tighter and more technical, and there's enough variety that the tracks actually don't completely blur together, which surprised me a lot. And that puts Formula GP above a lot of other terrible racing games that we've looked at. Because one of the easiest ways to ruin a racing game is by making every circuit and environment feel exactly the same. Here you can at least learn the layouts and improve lap times and kind of build a rhythm. There's a decent foundation underneath all the budget presentation. The more you play it, the more you realise that Formula GP isn't broken, it's just, of course, extremely cheap. Alright, so let's actually talk gameplay, because this part is another thing that kinda caught me off guard. The handling is okay. It's not amazing, it's of course not realistic, but it's playable. The cars feel heavier than I expected, so instead of instantly snapping into corners like an arcade racer, there's actual momentum to deal with. You need to brake a little bit earlier than you might think, you need to line corners up properly, and once you adjust to the strange steering weight, the game is kind of relaxing. There's almost something hypnotic about doing laps in this game. It's not intense enough to be exciting or difficult enough, and it's not terrible enough to be funny. It just exists in this strange middle ground of total mediocrity. It's incredibly basic, but it at least works. Now let's talk about the car variety, because there are 6 cars, but they are basically all the same. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's just the same vehicle with different colours and different liveries, if you could even call them that. There are no performance differences or handling differences whatsoever. I mean, I wasn't expecting balancing depth from a game developed by people who may or may not have existed, so I guess I'll allow it. Alright, so let's circle back around to the visuals. Formula GP is exactly what you'd expect from a late-era budget PS1 racing game. The car models are passable, they're not good, they're not really detailed, but you can at least recognise the fact that they are Formula cars of some kind. The environments, however, oh dear. Everything is muddy, the textures are blurry, the scenery kind of feels unfinished, and the draw distance isn't really good at all. The grass textures resemble green soup, the mud textures resemble dog diarrhea, and the crowd sprites look less like people and more like colourful television static. Combined with a slightly unstable frame rate, the whole game has this permanently shaky feeling, like it's barely holding itself together, and yet somehow it never actually collapses under that pressure, which is quite impressive. There's just something weirdly lonely about the presentation of this game. The tracks feel completely empty, the menus feel abandoned, and the atmosphere is almost liminal. It's like the backrooms of the Formula 1 gaming world, which is a sentence I thought I'd never ever say, but at least it does give the game a somewhat unique identity. Now let's talk sound design. The soundtrack is incredibly generic electronic music. It's peak royalty-free techno energy. The kind of music you'd expect to hear in the background of a DVD menu from 2002, which is, I guess, at least kind of nostalgic. But surprisingly, different tracks actually have different songs. That's way more effort than I was expecting. Going into the game, I was expecting maybe one track to loop across the menus and races, so that's a win in my books. None of the music is exactly memorable, but at least there is variety. The engine sounds aren't decent enough, they're not really realistic or powerful, but you know it's a car. The tyre sound effects, however, are kind of strange. They just sound off. I don't know how to describe it, so just listen to it. Something about it just doesn't sit right with me, and I can't put my finger on it. Which I think sums up this game pretty much perfectly. It technically works, but there's just something slightly off about it that I can't quite place. Now, before we move on to the reviews and sales figures and whatnot, let's just quickly talk about the AI in the game, because this is of course a racing game, not a time trial game. So the AI is of course not really advanced at all, but they're so easy that you don't really spend any time with them on the tracks. No matter what difficulty you're on, you will just probably fly straight past them. They're at least competent, they have racing lines, they follow them, they don't just crash out randomly like some of the other budget racing games we've looked at. They're just kind of there, really. They don't do anything wrong, they don't do anything interesting. They're just there to make you feel like you're racing something and not just driving through an empty track. But, like, you are driving through an empty track, so they didn't really do a good job. So with that out of the way, what really makes this game interesting to me isn't the gameplay, at all. It's the fact that this thing barely left a footprint. Seriously, try finding any information about this game. There is almost nothing. No meaningful reviews, no sales figures, no developer history, no behind the scenes info. I mean, hell, even the Moby Games site has literally nothing about this game. Formula GP feels less like a real gaming release, and more like I've uncovered a lost artifact of the PS1 world. And I guess that might be kind of common with these low-budget PS1 games. Of course, successful titles get preserved, because people actually care about them. But cheap filler games that are this old, I guess, just disappear. And Formula GP is exactly that. A forgotten game from the dying years of the original PlayStation. Okay, so now the time has come to rank Formula GP on our worst racing games tier list. Now, this is a game that at least functions, but I've struggled to find lots to say about it because you can literally finish the entire game in half an hour. I mean, the runtime of this video is going to be pushing like half the time it takes to complete the entire game. But hey, it's at least functional, and has some very strange charm to it. So I think this game will be joining Hummer Badlands in the rubbish tier. It's a repetitive and shallow game that looks rough and barely has any content, but I just can't fully hate it. It functions, the handling works, the tracks are serviceable, there's a variety of music tracks, and the racing is at least functional. And honestly, that puts it above some genuinely terrible racing games from the PS1 and 2 era. And so that brings us to the end of our look at Formula GP on the PlayStation, and with it, this week's episode of Worst Racing Games. So let me know in the comments down below, did you actually play this game when you were younger? Do you own it? Share all your thoughts, and as always, if you have a suggestion to add to the Worst Racing Games wheel, pop that in the comments as well. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap the bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thank you and goodbye.